We very quickly began to run out of resources, and thankfully our local volunteer fire departments, the city of Paducah, I can't praise them enough for their initial response to this with leadership and personnel and equipment. The city of Murray, the same way. Both the city of Paducah and Murray sent trained personnel on collapse rescue. And together, all of the volunteer departments, our local department, the city of Paducah and the city of Murray, began to rescue operations. That got us back past that brief period to where we quickly run out of equipment, personnel, and any resources needed for this scale of rescue operations. Very quickly after that, through the Emergency Operations Center, we began to spin up to the next level, state level response. We got a very fast response from our state, and from that response, it spun up to the federal level, and that's where you're going to hear reports from Jody and those that are here now with us currently. And without that effort, we couldn't be where we're at. I'm amazed at how quickly it seems slow to a responder, but with this type of devastation, it's crazy to me how quickly these key players have been put into place and the resources that have been flooding into our small town to mitigate this situation. And it's overwhelming, and we're very proud of our state, our area, our region, and our federal response for that. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jody, and he'll have more on that.
All right, so the state of Kentucky has an emergency management request process. I was notified about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning on into Saturday morning from Director Mike Dawson from State Emergency Management to ask if we could put a team together from Louisville to come down to help here locally. Obviously, the same storm was tracking towards the city of Louisville. It did miss us, but we could not send a team until we had confirmation that the same storm wasn't going to affect either the city of Louisville or any surrounding area that we may have to respond to there. So we put a team together. We got authorization from the mayor of Louisville, and we headed down this way with a group of 4 individuals to see what we could do. We also had rescue technicians from the City of Louisville Fire Department also that were a little bit behind us. So we arrived at the Emergency Operations Center, went in, offered our services, and they sent us to MPC Candles here on site to run this operation here. We arrived on site, met with local officials. I can't say enough about the rescue efforts that were going on before we got here. They rescued people. They got them transported to hospitals. A lot of those rescues were very difficult. We can't get into the specifics of those, but again, my hats off, are off to the local responders and the local rescue companies from Murray, from Paducah that responded as well, and handled a lot of the technical pieces of those rescue operations that were going on. We arrived on site. We identified, through meeting again with local incident management and commanders on site that, we were dealing with a situation that we could not handle even with the responders that we had coming. So I contacted, again, State Emergency Management through the system that we've got in place, and requested Federal Emergency Management team, and you'll hear the task force leader talk about their response here shortly. But we initiated that response very early in the process because we knew it's a very timely and effort that has to take place before they can get on the road, and we wanted to get them started very early. In the meantime, we took all the local responders, all the responders that were coming from Louisville. One of the other requests that we made was for the Lexington Fire Department to send their rescue task force down as well. We work closely with the city of Lexington. We have for many years for situations just like this. We requested them, and they arrived on site later on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and integrated into the response. Obviously, we had reports of people that were unaccounted for, not necessarily missing. I say unaccounted for. It's a little bit different because we didn't know if they were still on site, had they made it away, gathered with families, shelters, hospitals, and things like that. Through that first afternoon, site security was a big problem. I can't say enough about the National Guard and local law enforcement that came in to help us secure this site. We had onlookers, we had family, we had, a lot of people trying to come on site and offer services. You can see the dangers of the site. This is an active situation. Even from your walk in, there was debris in the road. Again, there's a lot of safety hazards here, so we couldn't just let anyone into the site. There's a skill set that has to be mastered before we can get them in there. So we organized into groups. We started picking out debris, searching, picking out debris. Doing what we call primary, secondary searches, and then moving that debris off the main site into a temporary landfill once that debris had completely been taken care of. We also had other resources from the City of Louisville, from St. Matthews, from Anchorage Middletown on site to help us here, as well as other local response agencies through the area. So when Lexington got on the site, we initiated daytime and nighttime operations. So the City of Louisville is managing the daytime operations, along with Lexington, and the fire department is managing the nighttime operations, along with Indiana Task Force 1 and several other local responders. We've had search dogs on site from multiple agencies, not only across the state of Kentucky, but nationally, that have come in to help. That are these trained search dogs. We have searched the area all down to the north of here, the track of the tornado. We have searched those areas to eliminate the possibility of people who were put down in that area. You can see heavy equipment on site. We've got local heavy equipment contractors that have provided services for us to help assist us with removing this debris. This is a little bit different than a normal collapsed building because the tornado came in and twisted everything. So it's a very methodical situation that we've had to do to take that into account. We've been in constant contact with the owners of the company. They've been very good to work with. They've been providing us a lot of information about the hazards in the building. Lower level hazardous materials. Their processes, the locations of all the different equipment inside of their building. So they've been very helpful in providing us any information that we've needed, and we've met with them several times on a daily basis. When Indiana Task Force 1 came on site, obviously they integrated into our process, and I'm going to introduce Task Force Leader Tom Neal to talk about their response.
Thank you.
Spell your name, please.
Sure. Tom Neal, T-O-M, last name's Neal, N-E-A-L. I'm the Task Force Leader for Indiana Task Force 1. Basically, our objective here when we got activated at 10:30 Saturday morning was to bring a Type 3 task force down to Mayfield to this particular location. We went to work yesterday morning, and we integrated into the operation that had already been started with Lexington Fire and Louisville Fire, working with their structural collapse teams. And we began the systematic approach of doing targeted searches and peeling and delayering this particular structure to help locate any live victims or those that live casualties, and then those victims that may have perished in the storm. In particular, in the areas that they identified from the plant manager and the building owners that were targeted areas that they would have sought shelter in from the storm. And so a lot of that had already been searched, but as you can see from today's operations with the crane and heavy lifting of the roof sections to help create additional void spaces so that we can get canines into those areas to help, again, locate those people that may still be unaccounted for in this structure. So that's the current operations for today. With that, I'll turn it back over.
Great. Some of the other services that have been provided again from the state are from around the state to help with the local fire departments, as we've been providing fire companies to stand by in their firehouses. The Pleasure Ridge Park Fire Department, again, another department from Louisville that came down and have been here since the beginning. One thing, again, this is an active site. We ask that you do not fly any drones over this site. There is a flight restriction over this site. We don't want to hamper any of the rescue efforts that are going on. We're doing mapping and things like that over the site right now. So again, we ask that you don't do that. So where we're at now and moving forward, we've got additional heavy equipment on site. We've got about 50 to 60% of this building moved away or that has been gone through. We're currently still working, looking for victims. The governor this morning referenced 8 fatalities out of this site. I'm not going to give the number of unaccounted for now because we're still trying to firm that up. Again, going through shelters, working with the company, going through local hospitals to make sure that we don't have any victims from this location that are in those locations. So additional information on that will come as the day goes on or the days go on. All right, I think I will take a few questions.
What's been your toughest challenge here? What's the toughest thing to deal with as far as the dangers of
the biggest challenge, and the task force leader can comment on those as well, but the biggest, one of the biggest challenges, not just the building itself, but the entire site. I mean, this was a huge storm that came through here. You saw debris, logistically where we place our equipment, where we park our cars, there's debris everywhere. So we're constantly trying to keep track of our responders, make sure that they're safe, make sure their well-being is taken care of, make sure we're rehabbing them. Anything else on?
Particularly in today with crane operations, we're moving steel structures from the roof to help create those void spaces. So today is a very dangerous operation because we're moving steel. As we move steel, we certainly don't want people in harm's way, so we're watching very carefully. Today's actual operation is considered slow to us, and that was mentioned before, because we have to very methodically rig the pieces of steel, cut the steel, and then move them away. And then as we move those away and they create additional void spaces, then we put canines into that section to help locate any victims or casualties that still may be living inside that building with those numbers that are still unaccounted for.
And we're, like I mentioned earlier, we're not just, we've got so many responders that have come to this site. We're not just looking at this building, buildings behind me, buildings behind you, this entire field. We're completely trying to eliminate the possibility for victims being in any of those locations.
When was the last time that you made a rescue of someone who was alive?
It was in the initial response with Chief French's operations.
What are the chances you'll find somebody alive at this point?
We don't know that right now.
How many people?
Search and rescue.
Yes, we are. That's correct.
How many people for sure were here when it happened? Do we know
that's
yet?
something that the company will have to answer in a later press conference.
It's emotional just covering this. I can't imagine what it's like being over there and searching for people. What's it been like for your workers, for your people?
Well, our initial response, to reiterate on what they were talking about earlier, one of the biggest issues was accessibility. It took some time to get here just because of the down power lines, trees, debris on the roadways. And then once we got here and started working, there was a difficult task at organizing the response and keeping accountability for the workers that were here. We wanted to concentrate our efforts with our best resources. We were very limited on resources initially. We're a small rural department, so we're very limited on some of our resources. So we were trying to concentrate those efforts into the areas where we knew we had people. And then, like I said, the accountability. There were so many people wanting to help that it was hard to rein that in and try to organize that and put that in an efficient working force. So,
how are your people holding up? Have they at least been able to have a break, go spend time with family?
So our initial response put most of our responders into working about 40 plus hours at once. Thankfully, we got the overwhelming response from the state and local areas, local EMS services like Mercy Regional out of Murray, and with the help from Paducah, some of their leadership on scene, we began to backfill initially our department so that they could rotate off and get some rest and food and hydration and change of clothes, something dry to put on. So that's where all of that has. We were stretched so thin and barely holding on, and then these guys just backfilled and have made it.
That's one of the things that we wanted to do initially, was come in and relieve them, so that this is just a small piece of what happened here. So and as far as our people, we're rotating on 12-hour shifts, so we do 12 hours on and 12 hours off.
12 hours on, 12 hours off. How many at a time?
It's about 100 responders on site at a time.
Total?
Some of that gets scaled back at night just due to some of the safety issues that we have after dark.
How long will this take, do you think? I mean, I know it's probably really hard to gauge, but just looking and given your experience, how long does something like this take?
Probably not the right answer, but as long as it takes. We'll be here. We've committed to the local emergency operations center that the group that's standing before you will take care of this site until it's done.
Sir, you described this as kind of slow for you today, but now once you get those large pieces of steel cut out and removed, how fast will the process pick up searching those other voids that are being created?
Well, canines can transfer structural rubble fairly quickly. It's harder for us as humans to walk across it, but for canines, they can get down into those void spaces and cover a lot of ground very quickly. The slow part is to remove the roof section that completely covered the production area of the candle factory. So if there was workers still in that area, that is our goal today, is try and make sure that those that are still unaccounted for, if they were here in the building, that we can recover them, and hopefully we can still find some of them.
So give us an update on how many people you're still looking for and rescue and relief efforts.
We're not releasing that number yet because we're searching every possibility before we release that.
Two more questions, folks. Two more.
You all have worked probably a lot of disasters. How does this compare?
This is the worst thing I've seen. I mean, the task force teams, the FEMA task force teams, they do this a lot more than we do.
We keep getting questions about that. In particular, Indiana just responded to Surfside to the Champlain Tower collapse. We were down in Hurricane Ida in Louisiana. This is very reminiscent of Henryville for us, where you had an EF4 or EF5 tornado hit southern Indiana years ago that had a direct impact to a school. So the significant damage, and as we've said here, this is just a small portion of what has occurred in the state of Kentucky. There are multiple counties that have been affected by this storm, and as we travel to and from the work site, because we're staying outside of the impacted areas, we are coming across other paths of other touchdowns of tornadoes, and so the National Weather Service is still investigating the number of tornadoes that actually occurred and spun off in this one storm cell. But the destruction of the number of buildings is immense, and so right here is our focus, but there's other federal USAR teams, Ohio Task Force 1, Tennessee Task Force 1, and Missouri Task Force 1 all came in this morning with additional resources, especially canines, to help circumvent and do wide area searches in a quick, efficient manner so that we can get that information back to the county EOC and the county officials so that we can ensure that we've covered the areas of their concerns in this county.
Will you be working through Christmas? We're less than 2 weeks away.
We'll be here as long as we need to be here.
Do you have a specific number of people you're looking for?
No, as I've mentioned, we're not going to release that number until we firm up looking at every location, potentially that they could be. So we'll be back here at 3 o'clock. It'll be the same process.
Yes. They'd like your names and titles.
Okay. Jody, J-O-D-Y, Myman, M-E-I-M-A-n. I'm with helping with site control here. Again, brought a team from Louisville, and I'm the emergency management director from the city of Louisville.
Darren French, Assistant Chief of Mayfield Fire Department. I was signed here by my Department Chief, Jeremy Creason. My name is Darren, D-A-R-I-N-F-R-E-N-C-A.
Tom Neal, T-O-M, last name's Neal, N-E-A-L. I'm a Division Chief with the Annapolis Fire Department and Task Force Leader for Indiana Task Force.
We'll give you all about 15 minutes to hang out, get some more shots, and then we'll see you again at 3 o'clock.
So we've just been listening to various emergency personnel who are at a candle factory that was essentially sort of blown away by these tornadoes. As you can hear, there are people from different states, different organizations coming in to help out. The latest information, I'll try to pull it up very quickly, that we got from the candle factory was actually sort of a little better than initially anticipated, that the death toll was just 8, but with 8 still missing. The expectation that was that the death toll would be even higher than that because there were over 100 people working at the facility at the time, working overtime to get those candles out for the holidays. But it looks like things are doing much better. But what you hear from those emergency personnel is just how exhausting this work is, that they are working 12-hour shifts, nonstop, one group coming in right after the other to try and, save any lives that may be still there to be saved. So we've been covering this devastation throughout the entire morning, and we'll have much more to cover for the rest of the day. Right now, though, we're going to take a quick break.
Welcome to CBS Mornings.
Up next, stories you'll be talking about today. That's a big deal.
People stop me on the street and say, I always learn something new every day when I watch your show.
This morning, we're going to begin with some good news.
Oh, you just put me in a good mood.
Just follow me. I'll lead the way.
There's always something new under the sun. CBS Mornings, weekdays on CBS.
An original documentary on CBSN.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future.
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An originals documentary on CBSN. Stream now.
If it's important to our nation,
the country is facing yet another unprecedented crisis.
It's on Face the Nation.
You heard the president. Where do you think this stalemate goes from here?
Making politics make sense.
What do you think happened here?
The why behind the biggest stories. Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan on CBS.
An original documentary on CBSN.
50 shows running, the lights blinking.
People fight their entire career to get to Broadway.
You've trained your entire life.
Spotlights, drama, passion.
This is what we live for.
Until COVID turned off the lights.
It's like going from a bright light to pitch black.
Scenes from Broadway's unique struggle with COVID.
It was devastating.
Broadway contributes about $15 billion to New York City's economy and 100,000 jobs.
The sound team, the lighting team, everyone.
The world does not realize how big this is.
This is how we make money.
This is a specialized industry. You don't tell a doctor to go get a serving job. You just, why are we different?
Are we going to be able to pay our rent? Am I going to have food?
What will happen in Broadway's new opening act?
We're in uncharted waters again.
The show must go on.
There is reason to hope again.
I think people are going to be crying. I know I will.
An originals documentary on CBSN. Stream now.
Everything was on fire.
You're left making decisions you don't want to make.
If we're at war or fire, we're going to spend a lot of money, we're going to take a lot of casualties, and we're going to lose. We got to do something about it.
All right, getting back to the destruction and the devastation left in the wake of tornadoes across the central United States. In Kentucky, a storm ripped through a candle factory, and the company says at least 8 people were killed. It happened in the city of Mayfield, where the storm also destroyed the First United Methodist Church, which had been there for 100 years. David Begnaud spoke to a few workers who survived the tornado.
You know, just as soon as we got to Mayfield, Kentucky, we went to the factory, the candle factory. And immediately we met Felisa Lynn. She actually asked if we knew whether she could get her car out of the parking lot. I told her I didn't know, and as we continued to speak, she just broke down and started crying. I mean, you can imagine, you lived through this tornado, you escape with your life, you have a story to tell. She ended up connecting us with 3 other survivors, and here are their stories.
They told us it was a tornado warning coming and everybody need to go for shelters. And all of a sudden, everything started caving in on everybody. Nobody seen it coming.
This is Barbara Tate. She worked at the Mayfield Consumer Products Factory for 2 years, right alongside her brother, who was there when the tornado hit and also got out alive.
Yes, it was a lot of stuff that fell on us, but we had to crawl like, you know, get on your knees and everything, crawl and try, because we couldn't move a certain way or everything would fall on top of us.
This is another survivor, Richard Padilla. He joined other workers in a central hallway, the strongest part of the building, when the alarms sounded. Do you need some help? He is still in so much pain after what he experienced.
The ceiling blows up. And a couple of seconds after that, a wall fall above us. And then we were in a position very uncomfortable with a lot of things over us. And then I finally saw somebody who was giving his hand to me.
Meet Felisa Lynn. She had only been working at the factory since September and was also in that central hallway when the roof was ripped off and the walls collapsed.
My both leg was twisted, my arm is twisted. To release my feet, I have to let go my 2 shoes. There was a small light in there, so I climbed up myself.
She limped out of the wreckage and recorded this video. You hear her repeatedly saying, "Thank you, God, for saving me."
But thank you po, Lord.
She also credits this man, Nelson Gonzalez, her supervisor, for rescuing her. He was the one who helped to free her legs so that she could get out.
I was make sure that the people who was next to me, I wasn't gonna leave them behind. I'm not gonna let them down. They're my families as well.
Nelson and Richard had recently moved here from Puerto Rico. They were looking for work, and the candle factory needed seasonal workers. They were working the night shift along with Barbara and Felisa, 4 of the 110 people inside that factory when it got hit.
I close my eyes and all I see is people hollering and screaming for help. So I'm not doing good at all. It messes with a person when you see that and you can't help anybody. You're trying to help yourself get out.
You get the sense that Miss Barbara feels some survivor's guilt. The CEO of the candle company told me yesterday that he started a GoFundMe page of sorts to raise money for the victims, and he himself has started with a $100,000 donation. Vlad and Marie, back to you.
Meanwhile, in Illinois, crews are focusing their efforts on recovery at an Amazon facility in Edwardsville that was destroyed by a tornado. The storm killed at least 6 people, and at least 1 person was airlifted to a hospital. Officials say that at least 45 people escaped from the building. Mola Lengi is at the scene with the latest.
Well, the fire department is still out here on scene, clearing the debris, which is just beyond the end of the building there. And they're also working with Amazon to make sure that every employee who worked here at this facility is accounted for. Now, we spoke to one mother who sat outside this facility for hours on Friday night, waiting for word on her son, only to find out he didn't make it.
He just had a really big heart. He would do anything for anybody.